Tom Hamilton, welcome to the show. First of all, congratulations on your new record. I'm Your
Thank you.
Vampire.
I appreciate that.
I want to say, dude, it took me by surprise a little bit, but not too by surprise because my only association of your music until now was primarily J-Rad and Billy and the Kids, which I'm sure you get all the time. But
Yes, and it's my favorite reaction. It's my favorite reaction when people are like, "Dude, what the heck was that?" Like there's just complete surprise. Yeah, it's nice. It feels nice to be able to surprise people.
it's good to do that. And what's funny is I wasn't completely surprised. And the reason why is because actually there's a funny story that you actually introduced me to the music of the Dead before I knew who the Dead were. I don't know how often you get that, but I was
Go
a
on.
Springsteen nut. I was introduced to Springsteen's music after my uncle passed away. He left me a bunch of his records in 2018 or 19. And I was going through a little bit of a tough time, and I put
Sorry
on
for
the Born to Run album, and that changed my life. Like the minute that I heard it, right? From the opening notes to like the end of of Thunder Road to the end of Jungle Land, I'm like, this fucking album is and the second it ended, I put it right back on again, and I just listened to it for a bunch of times.
I've been there.
And
I've been there.
yeah, yeah, and I started this Springsteen binge. I'm listening to all his live music, and I'm listening to his concerts from the '70s and the '80s, and I'm having the best time. And I'm talking to a buddy of mine who loves Fish, the Dead, blues, jazz. He was much more sophisticated at the time than I was, and he's like, dude, Atlantic City is a great song, and there's this great band called J-Rad that has an awesome cover of it, right? So I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. I've listened to the band's version, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. There are a couple of cool covers out there, so I put it on. And dude, it was the video from the Brooklyn Bowl. You guys played Atlantic City into "I Know You Rider," and it was my first exposure to a jam. It was my first exposure to like
Oh.
any of that shit, and it blew my mind, dude. And I'm like, is this all? Is this a thing? Did I just like what I just walk into, dude? It was crazy. So thank you so much, man. And so I figured that if you guys are gonna if you're gonna incorporate that into the set, then you must have been some of you guys at least must have been influenced by Springsteen and that whole genre. And then fast forward a couple of years, I'm in Connecticut like during one of those early post-COVID, towards the end of COVID shows in the Music Bowl in I think Westmont. Is that where it
Westville.
is?
Yeah.
Westville, yeah. And you guys had that saxophone player, and then you played Born to Run, I think, or Rosalita,
Yeah.
and I was like, what
We've
the
done
fuck
both.
is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
So thank you, man. I just wanted to tell you that story, and I hope you appreciate that because you
I
really you changed my life, man. Thank you.
I couldn't think of a better 1-2 punch than Springsteen and the Grateful Dead. It's just two American institutions, when it comes to music. And yeah, we started playing Born to Run. Have you seen Bruce?
You know what? I saw him twice, but in the last like couple of years, like 2023 tour, like when he came back post COVID, I saw him twice. But before that, that was it.
Okay. Well, when he does Born to Run, they turn all the lights on,
Mhm.
So J-Rad was playing, we were doing our first show at an arena. It was this small arena in Colorado. And me and Joe we're standing there it's like everybody's setting up still. It's the, middle of the afternoon, and all the lights were on, and I like jokingly, I was like, oh yeah, it's like, this is like this would be perfect to do Born to Run, and then, and like I explained to Joe, like when Bruce does it, he turns on all the lights.
Mhm. For
And
sure.
without, miss a beat, Joe was just like, well, dude, Stu, who's that sax player, he's like, Stu,
Mhm.
we have Stu. Should we do Born to Run and turn on all the lights? And yes, of course. And that was the first time we played Born to Run, was at that show, and that's what we closed the show with. Fucking, we had him turn every light in the house on, and there's video from it, dude. It's incredible. Like everyone's singing and losing their minds. Like the security guards are, it was really cool. But I mean, dude, Bruce, man, he's as American as fucking apple pie and baseball.
It's crazy. It's crazy. He really, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, one of those people that saved my life, one of those musicians that like I was talking to my high school students about this, but I said, the more that you listen to music and the more you expose yourself to it, it's like meeting a new person, right? Like you got like the superficial, like, okay, I could judge that you seem pretty cool based on your beard and your glasses and whatever. And then you go, and then you go, okay. And also on a slightly deeper level, he likes, the same music I like. And it turns out that we have similar morals and values, but you need to get to know the person. And then eventually you start to kind of identify new parts of yourself that you hadn't really seen before, but like that person kind of shows you that embodiment of like, oh wait, I kind of could be like that too, or I kind of get that too, you know? And so there was a lot of me that I didn't even I didn't even recognize or know how to put into words until I listened to Darkness on the Edge of Town or Born to Run or anything like that. And I'm like, this guy, I mean, I was a Dylan nut before, and I'm like, this guy has a way of putting emotions into such raw and clean language that like it's so incredible, it's so unique. So I mean, it changed me.
Dude, I completely, I identify with everything you just said.
So
It's
so that's why I wasn't surprised about the album, because it kind of had that, central South Jersey noisy kind of rock sound and that fun kind of garage band kind of sound, obviously with different, degree, yeah, varying based on the song, of course, but it had that tone. And so I'm like, this guy, I looked you up after, like, from Philadelphia, all right, that checks out. Like, you got that sound.
yeah,
So
man.
tell me about the album.
Yeah, I guess it was probably around like 2023. I was playing in a band that was called Ghostlight, and
Mhm.
we were doing the thing and whatever, and as happens with bands, it just kind of started to fracture and fall apart, and as that was happening, my dad got sick,
Mhm.
and it was just kind of like that was a pretty big 1-2 punch, and I kind of felt like it was like the universe telling me to like, hey man, there's some life that is coming at you pretty fast, and
Mhm.
that might be a good time to slow it down and take stock, I guess, and so I kind of got off the road and spent more time at home that I could with my old man, and kind of just switch the focus to being in the studio and being at home and kind of trying to work my way through
Yeah,
some
everything.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, like it's such a fortunate thing to be able to make art, you know, uh,
Mhm.
and to be in a position where you can, like I can slow my life down to create art. That's such a gift,
Sure.
and a place of privilege, And but yeah, so that's just kind of how I've always processed whatever's going on in my life, and so this record was born out of a lot of change, It was
Mhm.
you know also getting older, getting into middle age, it was it's a weird thing, to be
I
getting
just turned
older.
30, I'm panicking, dude.
Yeah, I
There
mean,
you
like,
go.
I will say this, dude, it's you're gonna look back, by the time you get to 32, you're gonna look back at your 20s and be like, "Man, I don't ever wanna do that again. That was
Right.
silly," Uh,
I feel that way about high school already.
right, exactly, so, there's a lot to process, man, and, I have I have my own mental health things that I have to deal
Mhm.
with, and that I've come up with my own coping mechanisms over the years,
Mhm.
and honestly, making albums is the biggest one, It's just how I process my life and the world and whatever, and so, that's what, that's what all the material from the record kinda just comes from this, it comes from the last, the COVID years and the downfall of a band and the loss of a parent and throw in a couple shitty relationships in there.
Mhm.
You get a lot of material to work
I was
from.
gonna say, by the way, I'm sorry that I mean, I'm sorry you went through all of that, but it probably I every time that I'm going through anything, like, I have to write now. I have to write ASAP, because otherwise, when things are good and things are rolling, like, you don't have time to write, and you also don't feel like you're in that place to really. And one of the ways that I've heard it described psychologically is that when we're experiencing problems or challenges or difficulty, we our brains switch into more analytical mode because we have to figure out how to resolve that issue. And so that's why a lot of times the most creatively fertile people, albums, cultures come from a time of challenge and strife, you know? And I mean, I look back on writing and, from my early 20s, talk about, at the same time, late teens, late teens, early 20s. I'm like, I don't know who came up with that or how to replicate that, because I was like, I had this existential angst of just, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And it feels like everyone else around me has it all figured out. And, my siblings and parents and friends and everyone seems to have shit worked out. And I'm like, where do I fall in all this? And that led to some of the best writing. And like, since I got married, my writing sucks, like, it's a
I
shame,
hear
but,
you, man.
you know?
It's tough when finding that balance between happiness and productivity.
Mhm.
But I think when you stick with it and you look at things, a career
Mhm.
is a long arc. You
Yeah.
know, so and it's funny, man, when you're that age, we all felt that way. Everyone felt that way. And any person that's that age now probably feels that way.
Yeah.
And you can tell them, "Hey, it's okay,"
Yeah.
Everyone feels this way. You can tell them, I mean, I remember, my dad having these talks with me when I was that age and having panic attacks and just like what self-confidence issues or whatever, and be
Mhm.
like, "You don't understand," and now here I am on the other side of the 20s, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, he understood. Of course he understood,"
Mhm.
we didn't understand as kids, yeah, man, it's all just so fucking interesting. Life is just so interesting, and if you have the wherewithal and the opportunity to be able to reflect on it, I mean, like, the funny thing is, man, it's like it, the people that really are living it and have it way worse than any of us, they don't have the time
Yeah. That too,
to
right?
sit
You
down.
need time to sit around and mope. You need
Yeah,
to be not busy.
Like, when you're stuck in a constant state of fucking fight or flight, or you're trying to feed your kids or feed yourself or
Mhm.
not get, kicked out of your house or whatever it is, you don't get to reflect. You don't have that time,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know, man. There's a lot of all this stuff that as you get older, and if you're lucky to be able to keep doing it, that you realize just how unbelievably lucky, you know.
Totally. So when you're writing this album and you're coming up with these songs, are you, are you looking at this as one big picture? Are you tackling each song at a time and trying to tell a story within it? How are you approaching this? And I mean,
Yeah.
because some of the songs are obviously much more upbeat than the picture that you're describing right now. And I'm sure that you've had ups and downs throughout those times to be able to kind of capture that. But yeah,
Yeah.
how'd you look at that? How'd you approach it?
You know, I definitely I was trying to make each song feel like when it begins, it's pulling you into its own world,
Hmm.
like this, like the for it to just be like these short stories
Hmm.
that feel immersive,
Yes.
I love, Bob Dylan, Springsteen, Nick Cave, any of these people who are like, real literary songwriters.
Hmm.
That's the thing I love about it. It's like, a song, even if it's a long song, even if it's a song that's 5 minutes long, it feels like an eternity in the
Yeah.
best way. Like like not like, oh my God, is this thing still fucking going? But like the song is something that you really can wear, you know?
Hmm.
Mm.
That's a good way
So,
to put it.
that's just kind of where I was coming from with a lot of it. I have a writing partner,
Hmm.
this guy Pete Tramo. We grew up together. He's one of my closest friends, and so we write all the music together. And it that was just something that we were conscious of, and we wrote a shit ton of material. I mean, we probably wrote 40 or 50 tunes,
Right.
uh, and they all kind of fell into their own lanes, their own bucket,
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
like stylistically. And where we landed for the album was just it was just the tunes that I think made the most sense to get, that like created a complete picture,
Mhm.
but they're all like they're all their own world, like they definitely are freestanding pieces, I mean, there's a song in there called Wrecking Crew, which
Mhm.
is, like 6 minutes, and it is very intense. It's a very intense, like emotionally intense experience to listen to the song, and that was, that's the goal. The
Yeah.
goal, is to really get under the hood of of life, and
Yeah.
and to get in there with the tiny screwdrivers and really get into the details of it. It's kind of like an anti-pop thing in a way, not with like any kind of malice, but just
Sure, sure.
like I didn't want it to be broad strokes. I didn't want it to be generalities. It's like, oh man, I wanted to be in a scene of a Christopher Nolan movie,
Sure.
or a Fincher movie, like these things
Yeah.
where it's incredibly stylized and intimate, and every detail is presented to you, Yeah, that's
It's very funny you say that, by the way, because there's a couple of artists, a couple of guitar players in particular. So I picked up guitar right around that same time that I discovered, as I was going through Springsteen and then the Dead, and I started picking up guitar around the same time, and I've noticed that there's certain people that when they play, this was fun about going from Dylan to Jerry Garcia and the Dead, was I felt that Jerry's playing was as eloquent as Dylan's lyrics were, and that it felt
under
like he was talking, and it was full of jokes and laughter and skips and and these little beats, and then again, I don't, I'm really not trying to blow smoke up your ass, I swear, but like your style of playing, I could pick out your voice in a song when you play guitar, at least with J-Rad and Billy and the Kids. You could pick that out in a second, or if there's a jam going on, and I'm on YouTube and it's just going through different feeds. I'm like, that sound. It doesn't sound like like it's Trey's guitar, and I look and it's you on stage, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So
I
you had
greatly
that voice
appreciate
for
that.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest thing, man, the thing I love about Garcia, and I think it's something, it was a gift that he was given, was Robert Hunter. Like,
Mm,
Jerry didn't have to worry about the words,
yeah,
so he was able to really just wholesale focus solely on the guitar part of it all, man. And yeah, I mean, like, dude, he's untouchable, like he's Jerry fucking Garcia, it's pretty awesome. And I do appreciate that, you're able to hear me through that, like, it's hard to, it's hard to play somebody else's music and to not try to sound like them,
right.
I mean, and for better or worse, some people hate my playing because I don't sound like Jerry, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean,
That's good, man.
that's not the assignment, I mean, like, that's just kind of, for, my ADD, like refuses to let me kind of do anything other than just be whatever this is.
Yeah, I think that's a superhero technique, man. I think that's an amazing thing. I really do, because I think that there's a
Right.
lot of people that have that, and you could tell what's fun is that 10 people could do the same thing and do it their own way, and you could really see what the difference is, and you could really, and if those people have this real sense of self and this established sense of, hey, I know who I am, and I want to get in a little bit to what actually, we could go here in a minute about music and AI. I want to ask you a couple more questions about the album first, but I
Sure.
definitely want to talk about music and AI. So, what the heck do you do with all those songs that you didn't write? How attached or that you wrote but didn't put on the album? What are you going to do with them? How are you attached to them, or are they kind of just like in a folder somewhere in your garage, or what
Oh
do you do
man.
with it?
Well, again, this, you're talking about like the career thing, right? Where it's like this
Mhm,
is a much bigger situation than just one album, or one
mhm,
song, right? I mean, dude, I have songs. It's songwriting is fucking weird, man, because sometimes you'll write something and or at least again, this is just for me. I could never
Sure.
speak generally about it, but I find that there's been times where I'll write something and I'm just not good enough to finish it
Mhm.
yet, and it just goes in a pile. And
Yeah.
then as you go and, I mean, really for any record, it's basically Pete and I will sit together and we'll write for ever, for months.
I love that. It's so much fun.
It is, but well, but it also it's a grind because
Yeah, sure.
because it's the thing of like, all right, your first few things you're gonna write are probably there's a good chance that they're gonna be derivative of something, so it's like, all right, well, that's not it, so you get those out of the way, and then we'll write some things and it's like, okay, that's a great song, but it's a great song because it sounds just like another great song, we're like,
Right.
okay, we got to throw that out, and you got to keep digging, and you got to do it's work,
Yeah.
it for me at least, it's work. I wish I was like fucking Ryan Adams, where I could just shit out beautiful albums at from whole cloth. I mean, he's
Mhm.
like people like that. God, I wish I could be like that. And once in a blue moon, you'll get a song that happens like that for me. But it's but usually it's work. And so we have to keep digging, and once we get a song, like, for this record, the song "Kissing with Her Eyes Closed"
Mhm. Great
was
song.
thank you, but and that was the song, like, we wrote from February to June and just didn't get
You don't
dick out.
wanna give up on that? You don't wanna blow you don't wanna just throw the song out the window and be like, "What the heck? Why does it take me 4 months to finish this?" It doesn't drive you crazy?
We wrote from then to then just to get the beginning of that song,
I see.
and then but once we found that and it came together quick and we're like, "Okay, this song is a definite," then all of a sudden you have a North Star and we now have a direction of what it is sonically we're going for. And when that happens is when all those old songs that I didn't use from whatever records in the past, I go into that and I say,
Yeah.
and I look at that and I say, okay, does anything here fit this idea? Does anything here fit this world, this batch of songs, this color palette, or however it is that I'm seeing the song that I know is like the fingerprint of the album, and that and then from there you're able to be like, okay, well, now this song that I wrote 6 years ago, it makes sense to me now in
Yeah.
context of this new direction. And, and I can finish it that way, So like a lot of the songs that we didn't finish, they're gonna wait their turn,
Yeah.
and they'll get there, or they won't, it's all okay,
Yeah.
and
A healthy
I'm
attitude
okay with
about
that,
it.
like it's yeah, there's just stuff that you just never know. There's a great piece of footage of John Lennon in like 1966 sitting in the studio with a harmonium or a melodica. I'm sorry, a
Mhm.
melodica, like the keyboard you blow into,
'Kay.
and he's playing the intro of Strawberry Fields. Fucking 2.5 years before,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
you just never know, man,
It's an awesome example. It's so
Ideas
crazy.
take time, and for some people,
Sure.
like, it's like I think there's the Paul McCartney side of it, right? Where, McCartney can just shit out a song like that and it's
Yeah.
brilliant, and it's, so, I mean, there's a million ways to make art and there's a million ways to do it. I think just the most important thing to any of it is just the intention, of going into it, wanting to create and to be honest about that, to be honest about if something sounds like something else, if something isn't up to snuff, if you're writing something that's a bit of a cop out, or
Mhm.
whatever, you
Sure.
gotta be honest with yourself and be honest about what it is. If are you being truthful? Are you saying the truth, or are you saying what you think what they want to hear? And not that there's anything wrong with the latter,
Sure.
that's that, plenty of people do that and make careers out of that. That's fine. But for being in the position I'm in, and the way that I like to make art and what I find to be important,
Mhm.
that's just where I come from. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I had, yeah, it's first of all, on the note of not throwing out anything that you write, I tell my students all the time, like, whatever you think is bad, keep it. You know, you never know where it's gonna go. You never know what's gonna I tell my friends writers too, like, because I used to do a thing with my friend, especially during COVID. I kind of miss doing it. It was 10-minute prompts to where, like, literally just I give you a prompt. I felt I saw a snowflake to my, to my left, and like write for 10 minutes on the first thing that makes you think of, go, or
Yeah.
and all these things. And they're great creative writing exercises and a lot of fun. And a lot of times it helps kind of pull we're taught to think too linearly, I think, and our creativity exists
Cool.
for a reason. And like if we don't, it's a muscle. We got to practice it, and these are all associations. So a lot of times, like snow, floor, grass, jersey, like whatever it is, sled, fence, boom, crash. And you have a story about sledding into a fence, and you're like, that's incredible. I don't know where that came from. That reminds me of a memory I have when I was 7 years old, and you would never have come across that. So I'm a huge fan of doing of keeping it, but you just need to be mature enough to be and patient enough with yourself to be able to kind of come back to it and say and be honest with yourself, which is also another challenging thing.
Vulnerability, man, is a terrifying prospect, and that's why art exists, right? I mean, like the not to like, I mean, like it certainly sounds a little hoity-toity, but it's the artist's job, right? Is to put the human condition in a format that somebody who doesn't have the capability to process it, you're doing it
Sure.
for them,
Right.
like
It
that
goes back
that
to what we were saying earlier. You expose yourself to something that, like, oh, I didn't realize I couldn't put that into words until now.
there it is.
Right.
Springsteen, the Born to Run record, the angst,
Yes.
that is
Yes.
the most perfect it's the most perfect example of what it feels like that summer of your senior year, or like it is that thing. It's very specific, and and for generations, there people have been listening to that record at coming of age and and it helping them understand,
Yeah.
what it means to go from, adolescence and young adulthood
Mhm.
into, the unfortunate realities of the world, and an album like Dark Side of the Moon,
Mhm.
I think, that's the human experience from
Yeah.
from birth to death. You know, there's a reason that that album is that album. It again putting the human experience into, just it's putting it right in your fucking face. And yeah, man, that's just like that's our job. Yeah, you as a writer too, all of us, to just be honest about what it means to be a person, and and just put it out there, and hopefully at some point, somebody finds your art and is able to help them get through that next hour or that next day,
Yeah.
or that
Sure.
break, or that marriage, or that going to school, or whatever it is that they're going through that causes them whatever, or and also good things, having a baby, or there's your kid gets married, like whatever it is, but our job is to help process.
Life along. To help life along. I really think so. I agree with you. I'm with you. The way that I fell in love with writing was, I went to Binghamton upstate for college, and my writing professor, was a Elizabeth, New Jersey blue collar factory guy named Joe Weil, who lost both his parents before I think he was 18 or 19. Worked extremely challenging life, and he wrote street poetry, and he wrote about the factory days, and he worked about the fact that that life was dirty, and he wrote this amazing poem. I could send along, called "Ode to Elizabeth," and it was just about how regular Elizabeth was and how magical it was, you know. And we didn't have like we didn't appreciate good art because it was good art. We appreciated it because it was available for cheap at the at the local movie theater, and and we just were excited to see a naked woman on screen and run around on the way home, and and there's something that's so real and human about that. That I'm sure that, and he writes, he says from all the time, he writes for himself as much as anyone else, and but has inspired thousands of students. Can I Did you find the music playing or the lyrics to be more of a cathartic release for you for this album, or both? Or how do you feel like you express yourself better, through words or through music?
Wow, that's a good question. It's two very different things, especially because playing live, whether it's with my band playing this material or with JRAD or whatever, I improvise a lot,
Hmm.
you know, which is life a la carte, right? It's it's very in the moment, and whatever is happening in that moment is affecting the current art, you know?
Hmm.
Whereas in making a record and writing lyrics is a significantly different situation, right? The assignment is a different intention.
Hmm.
So I don't quantifying it as like a more or less thing is a little tough. It's they're I think they're equally important things, just different sides of my brain, you know?
I see.
Like the lyric thing is my is I love the written word, man. I really do. I love the English language. It's awesome.
Yeah.
To be able to the power of words it's just it's incredible to me. So yeah, I mean I put a lot of care into the lyrics, I mean, just as much as the music. The thing with making this record was really a lot of it was the process that was very cathartic.
Hmm.
Most of the album was recorded with like a band live, in the room, which is was different than how I've been making records. I've been making records kind of in solitude with like a couple buds here and there, and still like a lot of overdubs and you know, this was a much more organic experience and communal. It's a much more communal experience.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was dealing with the things I was dealing with. My dad and my band, a relationship or two, and I was able to, the people I was playing with, to be able to have those conversations with them, and
Hmm.
to have and to I was able to explain to them what was going on with me, where I was coming from, to share my vulnerability
Sure.
with them, to give them the to hopefully give them the comfort and the feeling of safety to also be vulnerable.
Sure. Did it
Because
work?
I mean,
That's good.
I think so. Because I think that's that's the intangible of of the recordings on this record. I think there's a beautiful feeling to the energy of all those takes and those cuts, and I think that is because we were able to rally around each other, and I'm so grateful to all of the players on this record that were so kind to me, to let me feel the way I was feeling, and to voice these things, and yeah, to help push this emotional payload over the finish line on these tracks. It's because that's dude, it's heavy stuff, man. To just be
Yeah,
like,
it
hey,
really is.
my dad's dying, and and I'm trying to process that in real time
Hmm.
with you guys, and you know, sorry, it's
No, no,
you know,
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm really, I'm
it's
sorry.
yeah, I know, and yeah,
And you're always a kid when you have a dad around, It's a different, things change.
yeah, yes, man, they certainly do, but it was a really beautiful thing though, because a lot of the guys that played on this record, and girls, were old friends that knew my dad,
Oh, nice.
or just the fact that they're old enough friends that, they were also able to be like, "Well, hey, you know what? I'm also going through this.
Mhm.
Hey, you know, uh, you know, uh, someone going through a divorce or problems with their parents or problems with their, other musical relationships or,
Mhm.
it was just nice. It was very, like I said, communal and it was, familial in these really lovely ways. And yeah, I think it comes across in the music.
Yeah, it does, and it's you're lucky to you're smart and lucky to have put yourself in that situation to have that community,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I think the biggest detriment to our world today and our society today is isolation and loneliness by far. It's an enormous, enormous problem, and it's incredible how much community does even without providing a solution. Like, you don't need answers a lot of times in life. A lot of times you just need to get what you're feeling out somehow. And a lot of times we don't know how to do that. And or we're afraid, or we don't like our vulnerability. It just means you're opening yourself up to someone potentially being able to, at some point down the line, stick it to you and say, hey, yeah, you think about that. Well, I think I know this about you. And look at you with this and this and this. And so, people, we're afraid to do that. But that's the way that that you establish bonds. And that's the way you feel. I feel, the feeling of loneliness exists when you feel like there's no one that you can relate to or share with. And so when you surround yourself with that community, I hope that, that and you mentioned that, the most cathartic part was that. That's, I'm sure there's a reason for that, and I'm sure that, throughout the rest of your life, whatever ups and downs you're gonna go to, uh, you'll especially now that you have this established relationship, you already have you have a community, you have people to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's very special, and I have crippling anxiety, and whatever my things are, but so I tend to lean towards isolation,
Mhm.
with like just like depression and
Sure.
whatever, and you know, yeah, it's being able to come out of that and have your buds be there, and not even buds. The thing is that not everybody on this record I even knew before I made the album.
Yeah.
And so like to have new to meet new people and to be like, hey, listen, man, this is where I'm coming from, and to kind of like trauma dump a bit on them. All right, listen, but again, it's but people being game and being like, yeah, man, like I'm here to help you, figure that out. And it's an incredible kindness, and it's the power of art, we don't know each other. We don't have 10, 20 years of friendship, but we can communicate through our instruments and through our creativity and create something beautiful. And and that's really, I feel like it really comes through on this record.
Yeah, definitely. If you were to, take, a good dose of any psychedelic and jam out with a couple of people for 10 hours, who do you think you'd like to, pop on to it does by the way, it doesn't even have to be a performance. I mean, I don't know if you get more of a, adrenaline rush from performing as opposed to just jamming with people, but in your ideal situation, who are you jamming with for as long as you can, unlimited time?
Oh man.
You don't and anyone you know what? Forget about it. I don't wanna put you through that if you don't have to do that. You cut that out if
No,
you want.
it's okay. I mean, but like if it's like just if it's a purely musical conversation,
Yeah, like, what do you want, like, what would you wanna, do? How would you, what do you think would be the most fun for you just to be able to be like, "I just wanna be able to knock out a couple hours like that and a couple hours like that," and different, like, what are these inspirations that you've had that want that drive your music and that you would love to be able to play with?
oh
And
man,
especially without that bond, without that wall, like, when you take down that wall with some kind of psychedelic or,
yeah,
anything like that?
I do know. Yeah, I don't know. I think you know I would love to have been in a room with a guy like Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, you
Mhm.
know, who I think was really an open, just an open vessel, you know,
Mhm.
I think that would be a really beautiful place to be in as far as like, "Hey, man, let's take some fucking acid and sit in a room for 8 hours and just create,"
Yeah.
you know? I think that would yield really interesting results, you know? I mean, John Lennon would be
Mhm.
absolutely be somebody that I would love to just sit around and dick around with, you know? Again,
Right.
same thing of, like, we don't have to even, like, talk, really. It's just like, let's just be creative, you know?
Mhm.
You know? Yeah, those guys would are the first 2 to come to my mind of, like, I think just interesting things would happen, and they both seemed like they're generally, like, if they're in the room to be creative, they're that
Here come.
it's
I
yeah, it's gonna
my
happen.
my first trip, I was at a log cabin in North Car it's my second trip, was in North Carolina. Is Western North Carolina, about an hour from Nashville, right? Which I love Asheville, and I love that
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of the
me
country,
too.
man. And I put on, Van Morrison's Astral Weeks, and dude, I was like, I don't know what this guy did and how this guy captured that, but, it took me to a different universe, you know? And I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's really cool. Dude, playing on acid or playing
Yeah,
on anything, harder, looser, easier, more organic, less organic? What do you do when you panic? What do you do when if you get nervous? What happens?
well, acid I can't do. I can't
Okay.
I have filled my quota with
Yes.
LSD at this point. I mean, I'm sure at some point I'll get back to it because I've done that, you know, I took a lot of acid when I was a kid
Mhm.
and then stopped in my early 20s and then did another pretty deep dive into it in, like, 2017 and 18.
Nice.
You know, I'm not good with moderation. That's just not something it's not a gift I have.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, I got back into it in 2017, 18, and then just took it too far and still on hiatus from it. But, you know, I do you know, I eat mushrooms kind of often, you
Mhm.
know, especially playing music.
They're
The
real
path
healthy, by the way. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know if you're following the research that's coming out about this stuff, but I mean, psilocybin is incredible for our brains.
Yeah, well, I
I
mean,
mean,
you know,
doses obviously, but yeah.
I started taking psychedelics at a pretty young age. I was like 15 or so when I started taking them, and it learning what you're capable of is very powerful. You know, coming from like a, you know, I grew up in West Philadelphia. It's a lot of it wasn't awesome. You know, it's just like a
Mhm.
blue collar. You know, it I don't it's not conservative it's not conservative like conservative, but, like, conservative in the way that, like, it's not a bunch of dreamers, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's like, you
Yeah.
know, it was very much like a, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna get out of high school, you're probably gonna get a job in the trades, you're gonna get married and shit out a bunch of kids, and that's what you're gonna do until you die, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I found LSD, and psychedelics in general with my buds, it was like, shit. You know, it was like my brain was like in atrophy almost, you know, and
Mhm.
it was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. I could do this?" You know, I can have these thoughts. Yeah,
Break
it's
the matrix a little bit.
yeah, man. Yes. You know, especially, you know, it's like you're raised, you know, in the Philadelphia public school system, you know, where it's definitely they're preparing you to be worker bees, man, and you know, whatever, it is what it is. I'm not gonna have like some, you know, it is what it is. And fortunately, I was able to kind of get snapped out of that through, you know, through these things, through psychedelics. I think it's super important, you know, to,
Yeah.
you know, and then I got addicted to that feeling of what are the possibilities? What can we do? You know, so it
Yeah.
goes from like, you know, all right, man, we're gonna take acid for the first time to what happens if we take 10 hits? You know,
What happens? You probably just melt or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it gets fucking intense is what happens, man.
Are those memories sharp for you?
Yeah.
Are those memories from back then? Yeah, yeah, they're still pretty vivid.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, and yes, they were. I mean, well, certain ones. There's certain like things where it went, where it went over the line, and that
Hmm.
stuff's imprinted in there. You know, those
Wow.
ego death moments of like just white knuckling it for like a couple hours, and you're like, yeah, it could get super fucked up
Uh,
and weird. But bringing it full circle here, it's those experiences I think were for me very impactful and important.
hmm.
And when I currently when I play, I'll take I'll sometimes take a small amount of mushrooms, and it just gets me out of my own way.
Yeah.
I'm not a naturally self-confident person. I am I I tend, like I said, I tend towards being isolated. I tend towards being very shy. I tend towards, uh, so anything that helps me get out of my own way of self-judgment, or self-doubt, and really just enjoy the task at hand, which
Sure.
is to play music and to have fun with it, uh, and to connect, whether
Yeah.
it's connect with my fellow players on stage, or with the people in the audience.
Totally. Totally. That's a good answer. I think everyone needs to trip once. That's all.
I
I think
fucking
unless you have a
totally
genetic
agree.
disposition against it, I think that you absolutely need to.
I 100% agree. I think every human being should take LSD at least once. Or, I know. I'm going to say LSD specifically.
Yeah. That's right. Be a little uncomfortable. You don't need the soft little, mushroom trip for a couple hours. You need the
Yeah,
10
man.
hour, roller
Commit,
coaster.
motherfucker. Commit. My dad, he was I mean, he had his whole, his whole thing with drugs when he was young, and, certainly had a problem, when he was
Mhm.
young. But, when he was sick and, kind of the writing was on the wall, he went back to taking psychedelics, which he hadn't done since like 82 or something like that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, it was very cool. It was very cool to see, you know, look, this thing's gonna end for me soon.
Yeah.
I wanna try to figure out as much as I can, before, you know and I thought that was, yeah, I thought that was really cool and brave, but it also made sense,
Mhm.
of trying to navigate your way through, like, the last.
Mortality, yeah, through
Yeah.
mortality, through
Yeah,
life. At
and
least, you're making your way through it. Did he have revelations? Did he or was he taking it small enough that or was he not eloquent about it?
no, he wasn't going small. No, man.
Gotcha, gotcha.
He was fucking by the handful, man.
Mhm, mhm.
No, yeah, small was not that was not where he was going. No, he was going big, man. He was riding the dragon, but I don't know. I didn't wanna ask specifics. I
No?
you know, no, I don't know. Part of it was fear on my end,
Mhm.
but also part of it was, you know, I think there's a thing that happens when you're a parent. I don't know because I don't have kids. You have children, you lose a certain sense of autonomy. Like it's like, you know, uh, you're a parent. Your existence gets redefined in a way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Like you're no longer you're this guy's dad.
that's right. That's right.
I didn't want I didn't want to take that away from him, his autonomy in that.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it was like, if you want to share something, that's cool, but I'm not going to pry on this because this is quite literally your trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and but yeah, I don't know. It was heavy, man. It was heavy. It was a heavy thing, and but it was cool. I mean, it was cool that we were able to talk about that he was doing it.
Mhm.
And we talked about our stuff. But
Yeah.
I didn't ask about like did you figure anything out? you know?
It's very selfless of you, I think. I think it's very aware of you. I think it shows a certain way that you think to even approach it like that, you know, because I kind of would have just been like, "Hey, dad, is it work?" You know, like, what do you got?" Or, you know, even if
Well,
I sit down and have a conversation, like, "So, like, what do you think?" You know, and like you said, once you're a dad, you don't wanna hold things back from your kid. You don't wanna, like, not tell them things, and, like, you don't wanna be put in that situation either, and so, you know, it's awfully aware of you to even put yourself in his shoes in that sense.
yeah, man. Well, empathy's a thing, and, you know, I yeah, I don't know. It's part of my anxiety. Yeah, is trying to tend to other people's needs as quickly as I can,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's just I've been very aware, I mean, like social media, I'm a bunch older than you, and you know, uh, most of half of my life, over half of my life, was spent without the internet and was
That's
without
awesome.
social media. Seeing how me, how not to use a buzzword, but like mildly narcissistic are, these things have made us where we're all injecting ourselves in the fucking everything.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm just kind of like hyper aware of that, and just try not to make everything about ourselves.
You
You know?
yeah.
And so it's like, something like this with, like your parents dying. Well, I to make someone else's mortality about me, man, that's fucking crazy. That's a crazy thought that takes a huge sack
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, I'm gonna make your impending doom about my comfort level, or my curiosity. Yeah, that's
Can I ask, are you spiritual? Do you believe in God, universe, faith, any of those kind of things?
I do not believe in God.
You do not believe
I
in God.
definitely, personally,
Sure.
I think organized religion is a cancer. I think it's a
Okay.
bad thing, for society, our society now. It's like,
Yeah.
hey man, when we were cavemen, I understand that there needed to be some kind of fucking, something
Right.
to grab onto, but like I think we're smart enough now as a society with science to be able to kind of explain away anything. And that's not like, I mean, I was raised Catholic, and yeah, it's just not that's not for me.
Mhm. Sure.
I
But then
do
in the organized sense, you mean? Or
Yes,
just in
yes.
general? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
But just because it's like anything.
Mhm.
It's gonna eventually turn into othering
Mhm.
other,
Becomes
and
tribal, yeah.
yeah, man, I just don't, there's one tribe. All of us, we're all fucking here, man, and we're all doing this fucking thing together. And it doesn't matter, like, what gender you are or choose, or what race you are, or what doesn't. None of that shit matters, man. We all got to be doing this fucking thing together and pulling the rope in the same direction. So I don't subscribe to that. But I do think that we're all part of one tribe, and I think
Mhm.
that there's a collective energy to this thing that, you know, we get to, we're if you want to be positive, you could then put that's what you got to put into it, and if you want it to be negative, well, that's what you put into it, and it's the ebb and flow of it all. I mean, like sometimes it's real positive, and you can feel that as a society, and as a of all this together, where things can be good and things can be fucking terrible,
Yep.
and you know, yeah. So
Okay, that's good. So that's interesting. I'm totally with you on, I'm with you on almost everything you said. I mean, I happen to be observant Jewish, so,
yeah,
not in the organized religion thing, but that's
that would be
again,
cool. Yeah.
I don't take that as an affront. I don't, I don't,
Well,
and
and that's
by
the
the way,
for
Yeah.
me, that's all that is. You know, it's
Sure,
it's
sure,
it's a
sure.
personal choice. You know,
And
yeah,
and I've had my own struggles with the fact, especially in the last couple of years, I've had a st I've had serious problems with the tribalism that's going on in the world between religions, and, and I think that, I think that it is an enormous issue, and I think that and I think a lot of that is manufactured too. A lot of,
yeah,
especially with social media and especially with today's world that a combination of, and you were touching on this earlier, a combination of isolation and making the world about yourself
yeah.
is a recipe for, this absolute tribal lunatic, a heartbreaking, terrible behavior, and it's really sad. Did you watch, Disclosure Day, this new Spielberg movie yet?
I have not. Wait, I didn't even know it was out.
Dude,
I've been waiting. Yeah, I want to see
dude,
it.
go
It's
see it, man.
cool.
If you okay, go see it. I would love to hear what you think about it. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about it. That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah. Don't give me anything.
Yeah,
I'm
that's it.
going to watch it for sure. Yeah,
Cool. AI in music. AI is the world we're talking about right now.
it's so stupid.
It's so stupid.
Yeah,
Tell me more.
I mean, AI as we're currently using now. I think it's great for shit like detecting breast cancer early or
Sure.
making a fucking spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Oh, you know, but like the AI that we're all using, it's I just don't think people understand what the fuck it is.
We
It's
don't.
like, dude, it's not coming up with anything. It's not creating anything. Google, a search engine, the original search engines, they would search the internet and they would give you back the result of what you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
But it was they're giving you cited responses, right? These
Sure.
are, these are here's an answer to your question, and here is,
Here's the
the
sources. Here's different
yeah,
levels of
here's a
authenticity, and
citation.
then it organizes it. Right.
Exactly. The only thing AI did was take that, that safety
Information, sure. Yeah.
of like, hey, this is a reputable resource. They just took that away, and it's just searching the entire internet.
Mhm.
The entire internet is full of idiots. The
Well,
world,
yeah. And you're getting
there's
Reddit, AI is being trained on Reddit, it's being trained on Quora, it's being
that's
trained
what I'm
on
saying.
Twitter, and,
It's
like, they're
being
making
trained on
calls to
things
speak like human beings.
with there are 8 billion people in this world. Most of us are fucking morons. You know what I mean? And it's training itself on message boards and fucking, yeah, like you said, Reddit and fucking all the dude, that's not fact. That's not science. That's not truth. It's just it's it's a way to make us dumber is just really what it comes down to. And I think an interesting thing that I think I hope people start to do is look at history. Just like look at like American history over the last like 100 to 150 years, of like, I there they I watched these I've been watching documentaries on past U.S. presidents.
Ooh, cool.
It's dude, it's incredible because you
Yeah.
just
Who are you
realize.
watching about?
I did the Roosevelts, Teddy
Yeah.
Franklin,
Huh?
I James Garfield,
I live on
John.
Garfield Street, named after him.
Dude, Garfield,
Mhm.
man, that guy. So like when James Garfield was going to be president, right? When like
Mhm.
that election cycle was happening, the government was the exact same way as it is right now. It was wholly corrupt, and it
Mhm.
was not a secret. It was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can buy. But it was, it's just like, hey, look, you could buy any senator, any congressperson, and you could buy the president. You could do
Mhm.
anything you want as long as you had money, right? And all the poor people you're just going, nobody gives a fuck about you. You die, it doesn't matter to us,
Yep.
which is exactly where we are, like it's not about religion. This isn't about, it's not even about race. It's
It's
not
about
about
money
it's about fucking money, man.
and
That's
power.
all that it's about. And you watch these fucking documentaries and you see that, hey, man, we have Bezos and Zuckerberg and Thiel and these fucking assholes. Well, these assholes have always existed. They were just named
Uh-huh.
something different. They were the Roosevelts, early
Uh-huh.
Roosevelts. They were early Kennedys, dude,
Mhm.
Joe Kennedy was a fucking nightmare, dude. The Rothschilds, the Pinkertons, all these
Mhm.
people, they they just that's all it is, man. They just want to keep everybody fucking fighting and doing their thing while they grab the money out of your back pocket. And that's it. That's all this is. So, it's like AI, it's like it's confusion,
Yes.
like we can't make society smarter because when society is smarter, they realize that they're getting fucking just
You
robbed, you know?
Tom, you're killing it, man. You're freaking
Well,
you're fucking
and it's
killing it.
it's the truth. And when you look at the realities of, you know, what happened from after World War II to
Till
now
today. Dude,
is
I
not
my mind has been blown for the last year learning about this shit, dude.
dude,
I'm swallowing book after book, and my head is gonna explode, and my entire perception of everything is just upside down. And I'm like, what the fuck world
it's
are we living in, dude? It's
crazy, man.
crazy.
And it doesn't, and it's but the thing is that this is the outlier. What's been like having that strong middle class that we had in the 50s and 60s and 70s, up until the 90s, basically, when it started to really kind of fucking come back down.
Mhm.
That's rare. That's not the way it's been. The way it's
Yeah.
been is how it is right now, where
Yeah.
it's rich people don't give a fuck about us. They're just gonna fucking stick it to us and take all of our goddamn money and just try to keep us all fighting over scraps, and it's
Yep.
just like, I mean, whatever. I could be
No,
able to
no, no, no. Dude, I love this, and this show is for this. And listen, at the end of the day, and what's fun about this is, I think it's important. It's important to talk about, and it's important to say, and it's important also to be aware because I think that even if someone says, "Hey, Tom, you know what you're talking about," I don't. No one needs to believe you. All you got to do
No,
is open a
yeah,
book. All you
this
got to
is
do is
just
open a book. Like what the hell does a Brian Hirschman and Tom Hamilton know? But open a book and tell me something
absolutely.
different, dude.
Yeah,
Seriously. I had a guy on the show, and he was one of the nicest guys, and I couldn't have disagreed with him pretty much more for a majority of the episode. And he was a military intelligence historian,
oh,
super great guy, super nice guy. And what I noticed about the people that I've had a lot of fun talking to, and the people that I kind of get along with, is that a lot of times I like the people that don't have an end goal in mind when they start their journey. They just want to hit the road and see what comes their way, or what where they find themselves and what piques their interest. So, for example, I did an awesome episode with the neurologist who started as a musician, a classical pianist, and now she studies music and dementia, and music in the brain, and where creativity comes from. And she's taking kids and having them jam in a X-ray machine or whatever, a CT machine, and
yeah,
seeing which part of the brain, the reward systems are lighting up from jamming and from improvising, which is
that's
so
very,
cool.
yeah.
And I had it such and she said every single step of the way of her journey of music and the brain just was pursuing one interest after the next. I think that this gentleman, who I really, really like, but didn't agree, I think he started with an end goal in mind, and his entire, you know, the rest of his opinions and everything was kind of just backing up that starting point that he had, and he already had the destination in mind. So, like,
He's
how do
just
you just get
reverse
there?
engineering. He's reverse engineering
Exactly.
what he wanted to hear. Yeah, I mean, and that's very symptomatic of where we are today generally,
Mhm.
with our culture. It's the thing is, man, not knowing is, I think, a much scarier proposition to most people. And I think this goes back to the LSD thing.
Mhm.
I think the thing that acid uh, gave me, and I think gives people generally, it helps you be okay with saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know doesn't mean, you know, well, then my opinion's wrong. Like, I don't know just means I don't know. And I'm okay with that. It's okay to not know something.
Mhm.
I think, but that's a terrifying, I can empathize with the fact that that's a terrifying prospect to,
Mhm.
for somebody who's, maybe just
You have your whole worldview already, and you don't
right.
wanna shatter it. You can't shatter
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
But the thing is, shattering that worldview
It's
is
freedom.
the best. It is. Exactly, dude. It's like, oh, fuck, it doesn't have to be so closed off and narrow, like life, that's just not how life fucking is, man. Life is going to happen no matter what. You can try to control it all you like. That's not reality, man. And so it's just like that kind of goes back to like the thing with organized religion, for me growing up in that thing,
Mhm.
it was like, dude, you're preordaining the whole fucking thing. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you're taking all of the fun of life out of it, like
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
wrong all the time. I love I like and that's and the reason that I know that is because I search I search for truth and I search for fact and I search for what this whole thing means, and that's a moving target.
Yeah.
The meaning of life, that changes. What I wanted out of life when I was 19 was not the same as what I wanted out of life at 32, and wasn't what I wanted out of life at 42.
Mhm.
Like I think Bruce Lee, I was super into Bruce Lee when I was a kid. And the martial art that he invented was basically a reaction to the more stiff and
That's right.
rigid forms of martial arts that he grew up learning. And
Mhm.
his whole philosophy was to be like water. If water's in a box, it's a cube. If water's in a glass, it's a cylinder. Be like water, and that also, I think I've been lucky that comes from also most of my life I've spent improvising, which is
Mhm.
a tool that is really important to learn, of accepting your surroundings and making something beautiful out of it, which is all improvising is. It's like I don't get to choose what the other people on stage play.
Yeah.
I only get to choose what my reaction to that is. And if there's a better metaphor for life, I don't know what it is.
No, I don't either. I wanna talk about the jamming a little bit now. This has been a ton of fun, by the way. Thank you so much. I'm having such a blast with this.
My pleasure, man.
Good. I've had a couple of occasions where I'm driving up and down, 95 and I'm backed up and it sucks and no cars are moving and I find myself at the joint and I pop on one of your guys' shows and, I'm trying to make the 10-minute drive that turned into an hour a little bit more tolerable. And, one thing and I'm curious if this is just my observation or there's any kind of, reading into this that I hear. When I noticed with a lot of the JRAD, songs and covers and performances, they almost feel like you guys are painting a tapestry, from the beginning of every of each song, and, like, you kind of start with, like, the tone and, like, the bare bones and then as the song builds, you guys add more detail and color until the song becomes a little bit more 'cause sometimes it takes me some time to recognize what you guys are playing, and where you guys are heading with what, and so it literally feels like everyone's painting with their instruments in real time, and everyone's kinda getting a view of okay, like, how's this picture of, Fire on the Mountain gonna look today? How's this picture of Ruben and Cherise gonna look today? And, like, it ends up and each time so I'm just wondering, is that my perception of things, or is there more of a connection there that, you guys
I
a
mean,
language you guys are speaking?
that's a beautiful way to put it. I mean, but yeah, I mean that's kind of
That's what it is, right? It
I
has to
never
be
really
that's what it is.
I
You're
never
so
really thought
clear.
about it like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like watching Bob Ross paint, like
Right.
something. I a lot, and we have fun with it. Sometimes we'll kind of start it off in a place that has no real connection to where it's going, to specifically I mean, just to see. It's like a challenge. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
can we go from this thing to this thing? And so that's fun. You're hearing us figure it out in real time.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, okay, we say it's Fire on a Mountain. It's like, okay, the song is Fire on a Mountain and we have to get it there. But one of us will start this improvisation thing, all the way over here. And it's like, all right, let's, and by all, I mean the five guys on stage plus everybody in the crowd,
That's right.
we're all going to figure this out together of how to get from here to here.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's this, and the times that it's the most fun is when everyone is surprised, including,
Yeah.
where like we're like, fuck, man, I don't know if we're going to land this thing, and then, and then you get there and that's the payoff, and sometimes it doesn't pay off,
Yeah, so
so
what happens when you don't land it? How does that what does that what
move
is that
on.
you just feel it and you all know it?
Well, you just move on,
Yeah.
like the thing is, in the jam scene that I think was getting a little. I think the reason people really loved J-Rad is that we were taking those chances, uh,
Mhm.
and we still do, but we were taking those chances, and everyone was doing it with us. There was a real sense of, for lack of a better word, danger that we're not gonna stick the landing,
Yeah.
and that's the attraction, that's why people went to see The Dead,
Mhm.
when Bob would fuck up the lyrics to Truckin', people didn't throw shit at him, they applauded. "Oh, yeah, man, hey, we all fuck up sometimes, but, like, it's the effort, it's like the
Yeah.
fact that you're going for the big trick, and sometimes you land it and sometimes you don't, but it's the effort is why we're all there, so yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, that's one of the things, right? About, and I've heard this people say this about J-Rad before, of like, well, sometimes it does, it's like sometimes it feels frantic, or sometimes it doesn't land or whatever. It's like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what makes it so when it does land, it's special,
That's right.
because, like, we're not phoning it in, we're not, pre-planning. Listen, we all make this deal together, right? We're all going to get in this room. The five of us plus all of you, we're all going to get in this room, and we're going to try some shit out, and some stuff's going to work, some stuff isn't, but we can't promise perfection, but what we can promise is the effort, and we can promise
Mhm.
that it'll be entertaining at least. And and that's the whole thing.
I think one of the o I listen, I like to do deep dives at a time, like, so if I have a hard time covering, let's say, listening to 10 different artists at one time or 10
I'm
different
with
bands
you.
at one time, I'm hard on the Billy String change train right now, and I wanna say this, I feel this a very similar way about his jams too, where a lot of times I'll have no idea, or it sounds like you don't know where they're gonna go, and, like, you don't know how they're gonna pull through, and all of a sudden, like, everything gets distorted and weird, and, like, he has that kind of weird that whole band has that kind of weird background where they're an amalgamation of genres in such a fun way
Yeah.
that you never know what they're so tight, and you don't know where you're gonna go, and, like, I love to either drive or jog and, put on a 10 or 15-minute jam that leads into another song and not know where to go, not know where it's gonna go, and just figure it out while I'm driving or jogging and be like, "Are they gonna make this?" Like,
Yeah.
this is a crazy landing to try to stick over here, and, like,
Right.
but
It's
it's
exciting.
amazing is that they do, like, but it creates stakes, it creates an investment in you. You're like, these guys, like you're flying down the mountain, 150 miles an hour on your skis, and, like, you don't know you don't know whether there's a tree in front of you or not. You kind of hope not.
Dude, that's the whole thing, man,
Mhm.
That's the game,
Yeah.
and, yeah, and it
Can I ask how? And I'm curious about this because I had such a I loved Billy and the Kids. How'd that come to be? Can you tell me a little bit about that, or maybe the backstory, or some of your playing experiences with them?
yeah, sure, you know, when J-Rad was first coming out, we obviously had, like, a big presence,
Mhm.
in the scene or whatever, and I had played with, I played with Phil first,
Mhm.
um, and I think basically it was just kinda like the name. J-Rad was, like, doing this thing, and the fact that one of the guys in the Dead, at least at that point, had, given the okay, and, so Bill was putting they were trying to put together a band for Bill at this festival called Lockin' that was in Virginia.
Yeah. One of my favorite, that Derek Trucks album where he plays Layla and other assorted love songs,
Oh, yeah,
Live at Lock-In was just fucking out
unbelievable,
of control. Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, Derek is like, I think he's the best living guitar player, on the
Yeah?
planet. Yeah, I don't it's I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so it was the second lock-in festival. And so Bill, I think basically it was kind of like they're trying to get Bill involved. But he had a band that he was playing with called Seven Walkers, but it wasn't really doing anything. It wasn't that interesting, I don't think. And I don't think he was very interested in it anymore. So I think the guys at Lock-In were kind of like, all right, let's help put together a band for you, and yeah, so I just Aaron Magner, who was the keyboard player in Billy and the Kids, is he's one of my oldest friends, and our bands, he's in the Disco Biscuits, I was in a band called Brothers Past, and we've known each other for fucking years, man. And Billy's manager was a guy that like grew up in the scene that the Disco Biscuits and Brothers Past were in. So he knew both of us pretty well, and also knew our connection. Me and Aaron, we are two peas in the pod when we play together. It's really, it's awesome. He's one of my favorite guys to jam with. So yeah, so they were just like, hey, we're putting together this thing. Would you guys want to do it? And clearly we're like, fucking yeah, man. It's Bill Kreutzmann. And so it was me and Magner and Steve Kimmock and O'Teal.
Yeah, sure.
We were the band playing with Bill, and it was really fucking fun. It was really fun. The set was very well received, and I think from that basically was like, okay, well, Bill enjoyed this aspect of it. O'Teal was still in the Allman Brothers at the time, so he, commitment wise, I don't think he was available to like be in another band,
He's all over South Florida nowadays. I've seen that he's been down here a bunch recently.
Well, he lives in Florida, or
oh yeah, well that makes sense then. Okay, there you go. Yeah,
and yeah, man, and fucking, so and Kimmock, Steve does his whole thing. I don't think he had really any interest in joining another band. He's Steve Kimmock. He doesn't need that. So yeah, so we got Reed Mathis to join, who I think Tea Leaf Green was the band he was in last, but they were kind of ending. So Reed had time on his hands, and that was the band, and we when Bill was like, hey, we want to keep playing, and keep this kind of core of me, him, and Magner. So yeah, we added Reed, and that was basically it, and then it just became this thing where it was like, okay, the gimmick basically is that like this is the band, and every time we do a run of shows, we'll have a guest, that is, and that's been that always kind of kept it fresh, We had like Kraz was one of the first guys, and then we had like Al from Mo, and then there was a period where after Further ended, which was Bob and Phil's band with Russo. When that band ended, and before Dead and Company was a thing yet, the talk was basically that Bob was going to join Billy and the Kids.
Ooh, man.
Like, full-time manner. And we did shows together, with Bob. We did, we headlined Peach Fest, and we headlined a Lock-In, and it was, yeah, it was cool, man. We were this close, to that being the next thing, and yeah, that was just kind of it. And then, and then as it kind of kept going, it just kept expanding, I mean, James Casey, we're super fortunate to have him join the thing. And then he just kind of became like a full-time member, which was really great. And then, we had Strings, I mean, like, that was before he was the guitar god that he is now. But, yeah, it was that was a really cool time. I mean, we spent a week or two in Hawaii together during COVID to get those.
What was that like? Was that fun?
Yeah, man, it was fucking awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, we're coming out of a year.
You were here for 2 weeks in Hawaii, especially how many times did you play within those 2 weeks?
We played a lot.
Did a lot.
It was a lot of rehearsal. I mean, the thing was, we're coming out of COVID, so nobody really was playing that much.
Yeah.
So, and especially Kreutzmann, so a lot of it was just kind of like knocking the rust off collectively, for a bunch of guys that hadn't really been able to play that much over the course of a year. And then kind of like workshopping the songs, workshopping the set. dude, it was fucking awesome, man. You know, maybe it was only 1 week. Honestly, I can't remember. I mean, it was 7 years ago, 6 years ago at this point. But
It's a trip out.
yeah, man, but it was really cool, you know, you know, Santana came by. You're like,
Yeah.
you know, what are we doing here, man? This is great. But it was a really beautiful time to coming out of COVID, and we just all, I think, felt so lucky to be there and to, you know, be doing that, to be playing that music with those people, and you know, and making new friends. You know, again, you know, it's like you know, Strings. No one, you know, none of us really knew him before that, and he wasn't like this big famous dude. You know, he was just a guy. So it was, you know, it was just nice to just be regular dudes hanging out,
Mhm.
and you know, yeah, and then you know, and then from there, what was after that? Red Rocks was after that.
Red Rocks is awesome.
That was,
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, that was, I think, a real moment in Grateful Dead history, you know? I mean, like, that was probably the biggest thing, you know, I mean, that was the biggest thing that Billy and the Kids did for sure, and, you know, I think it was one of those, like, landmark post-Garcia shows where it's like, yeah, man, that was
One of them.
a real thing, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, there was real magic on in those shows, and yeah, that was one of those things I'll never forget. That really stood out, you know?
That's amazing. It's a great story too because you know there's something there was something so much fun and fresh. It felt like Billy and the Kids feels fresh to me. It doesn't feel, you know, it may be because you guys haven't overplayed, you know, or haven't got a chance to overplay,
Yeah,
and so you know there's not enough that keeps it, you know, exciting and fresh. But even the set list, they're just such fun little additions. Like positively Fifth Street, like where'd that come from? But like it was so cool, you know.
yeah.
I was gonna say last couple of minutes, do you want to talk about your favorite places to visit or your favorite Dylan songs? Because I kind of want to talk about either one of them.
I well, hey, man, I will talk Bob Dylan all fucking day if
Let's
you
talk
like.
Bob Dylan. Let's talk Bob
Yeah.
Dylan. I did a podcast, literally an hour and a half with a Bob Dylan teacher, professor in University of
Where was your
Chicago.
professor?
Huh?
University of Chicago, okay. Alright,
Yeah.
cool.
His name is he wrote a book. It's interesting. He wrote a book, I think I have it here. That it doesn't revolve around the lyrics, but around the music of Bob Dylan. He's like, everyone
Okay.
writes about the lyrics. Everyone tries to write about the guy, even though no one could figure out his past or his history. It doesn't make any sense. We just talked about the music, and we talked about the different, the fact that he appreciated, for example, right? Like, "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue." He's like, Jerry Garcia gave that song new meaning to me. You know, like I didn't even know what I made. Or, dude, Taj Mahal's takes a lot to laugh, or takes a train to takes a
Yeah.
whatever, you know, dude, blew my mind, you know, and I mean that's not to mention the classics.
Well, the thing about Dylan that I think is that in my opinion, musically, the thing about Dylan, his songs, I think it was Springsteen. Springsteen once said, he's like, you know, "I speak about a very specific place and, you know, a very specific life, and people identify with it, obviously, and that's why he's Bruce Springsteen." Uh,
Mhm.
but but Bob Dylan, it captures all of existence. You know,
Yeah.
every song is everything. You know, and I think musically, the thing about his catalog, more so than the Dead's, is it's like the Constitution, you know, it's a living document. All those songs are super living documents that, you know, that was on purpose. I mean, because he's coming
Mhm.
from folk, he's coming from, you know, Woody Guthrie and, you know, where you can just take a song and you can make it anything you want, you know, and so, you know, a lot of his stuff has that freedom to it, you know, especially the
Yeah.
early shit where, you know, those recordings are just happenstance. It's like, all right, hey, you know, you walk into a studio with Bob Dylan, he's going to tell you the song once, and then they're going to hit record, and you're going to play it, and probably he's just going to be like, okay, that's it. Like whatever the
Yeah.
fuck you did that one time, you know what I mean? Like it's not the same amount of intention there, you know. Like they're just like quick demos almost, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's super interesting and cool is that it is so open for interpretation, you know, and he's doing that, you know, like
Mhm.
I've seen him play 20 times. And it's always so goddamn different, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he likes fucking with people, and he likes fucking with his material, and I
I
think that's a
love that about him, by the way. That's the one thing, it's very interesting because, you know, I
it
again, when you do deep dives into, these artists that you're pursuing, a lot of times, for me, I have a harder time separating the art from the artist. I like the reinforcement, for example, that Springsteen's a good guy and that, like, the songs that he writes, okay, they match up.
it helps, yeah.
Dylan is such a fucking enigma, and he himself and that's one of the things that I like. You will never figure him out because he doesn't have an identity like that. And every 10 years, you put on a I mean, he's been making music since, the
60,
early '60s,
yeah.
and every decade, you could just play a different album, and, like, you'll be like, is this a different artist? Is this a different
Yeah,
genre? Like, what am I listening to now? Am I listening to his Christian phase? Am I listening to dude, the Budokan, the Live at the Budokan
yeah.
album is the one that got me into Dylan to begin with. I'm like, "This is crazy. It's so
You
cool."
so I'm coming up, I grew up, classic rock. I grew up with the Dead. I grew up with the Almonds. I start playing music, and I'm playing the music of the Dead. I'm playing the Almonds. I'm playing Fish, and in all that is implicitly Bob Dylan is, obviously in all that because he's
Mhm.
one of the, the foundational people of that world. So I avoided Dylan like the plague for my all of my youth
Mhm.
because, I was just like, this is where everyone's coming from this guy, like, so I wanted to have my own lane.
Mhm.
And then when I was 28 years old, 28, dude, I'm already into a career,
Yeah.
and I went home with this girl, and she, she's like, oh, well, let me put on some music. And she puts on this, she hits play on, we're at her parents' house, and she hits play in the CD player, and, we're hanging out or whatever. But this music's on, and I'm like so distracted. I'm like, man, hey, real quick, hold on. Yeah, this is great and all, but like, what are we listening to? You know? And she's like, it's my parents. I think it's Bob Dylan's new record. I couldn't stop. And I was just like, hey, hold on. I got to look into this,
Yeah.
And I looked, and it was Modern Times, which came out in like
Wow, sure.
2006.
Uh-huh.
And I left this chick's I left to deal with this fucking Bob Dylan record. It cracked something open, and I couldn't get enough of it. And I was just like, man, fuck. If this is what this guy's doing at the time, I think he's like 66 or something,
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck. If he's doing this at 66, I guess I got to do the deep dive, And that's what got me into Bob Dylan was fucking Modern Times. The
Yeah.
record he put out in 2005 is the record that got me into him, to circle us back at the beginning of this part of the conversation where you're asking like my favorite Bob Dylan stuff, my favorite Bob Dylan stuff falls in that later part. I think from, not my fucking Oh Mercy. I think from Oh
Yeah.
Mercy, Oh Mercy, fucking Love and Theft,
Mhm.
the one right before Love and Theft, Time Out of Mind, and Modern Times. I think those 4 records, I'll put those against anything he put out in the 60s or 70s,
Wow.
and, and I think it's hard to say like a number 1, but I would say top 3. I think Most of the Time. Do you know the song Most of the Time?
Yeah, sure. Most of the time. Yeah, of course.
I
It's
think
awesome.
that is God tier songwriting. And, and that's fucking 1989, dude,
Mhm.
like that is, that is so far into a career, and he's still able to find these new nooks
Dude,
and crannies.
more blood more blood on the tracks, or more blood, more tracks, and then
Ah,
he added Up to Me on that album, and that song Up to Me, I was like,
oh,
"Where'd this come from?" And I'm trying to find the original one, and I'm like, "It's not even in 1975, I don't know where it went, man. It's too good."
he's, he's Bob Dylan, man. It's really, yeah. I mean, dude, I love
Yeah,
the
yeah,
guy.
yeah. Tom,
Absolutely.
I appreciate the time, man. It's really so nice meeting you. I hope we could do this again sometime.
Anytime, man.
But
This was a great conversation. I appreciate how thoughtful you are, and you just seem very earnest and have great intention, and I appreciate your time and your energy, and thank you for doing this.
thank you so much, man. It's great talking to you. Take care. Thank you so much.
See you, bud.
Bye.